everyone, so quick disclaimer before I start. There are many fake accounts of me circulating in the social media sphere right now, and I've finally had enough of people abusing my name to spread messages that I disagree with. So right now I will put my real social media accounts on the screen, and all other accounts are fake. I only have those accounts, and so please unfollow the ones that are fake and maybe even report them, because so far all my attempts to report them have been denied. When even the non-libertarians among us give up on the state-funded police, that to me is a clear sign that we are in a civil war. Whether you take the George Floyd situation seriously or you realize that it's a deliberately overhyped and distorted narrative and that there are two sides to the story, the specifics don't actually matter. What matters is that it was a trigger event that is now being abused to incite a cultural, a race war, and a political war. There is no point in arguing whether Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, because they are just two sides of the same coin and none of them really make an effort to listen to the other side. I would even argue that most Black Lives Matter proponents are genuinely scared for their lives and think they can't go out for a run anymore because they will be killed by a police officer. And quite frankly, to make Black people believe that is horrible. To push a false narrative about alleged systemic racism is an act of psychological terror against all of society. It creates disdain against one another on both sides of the debate. People now see each other as the oppressors, as the personification of the virus, and as parasites to the planet and the climate. All the little fairy tales, be it the racial divide, climate extremism, corona panic, or gender absurdity, they have all been invented to condone this hateful civil war mentality and increase our longing for state authority. I really feel like intersectionality is a different kind of burden on a social justice warrior's shoulders. Must be quite stressful to handle hashtags stay home, save lives, Black Lives Matter and Pride Month simultaneously without neglecting one or the other. And I don't mean to offend anyone when I use the term social justice warrior because it promotes a certain stereotype, but if you are offended by this term, then you might just be the very good representation of this exact stereotype. For example, J.K. Rowling just put out a statement on Twitter about women menstruating, which her followers were outraged by because they thought it was insensitive towards transgender people. People who menstruate, I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out. Wumban, wimpant, woomut. If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. The idea that women like me, who've been empathetic to trans people for decades, feeling kinship because they're vulnerable in the same way as women, i.e. to male violence, hate trans people because they think sex is real and has lived consequences, is a nonsense. I respect every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them. I'd march with you if you were discriminated against on the basis of being trans. At the same time, my life has been shaped by being female. I do not believe it's hateful to say so. When I say I disagree with J.K. Rowling being attacked by cancel culture for saying that women have periods, it's not because there is a significant amount of entitled social justice proponents who spew this biological nonsense. It's because I care that we allow ourselves to be distracted by such an irrelevant debate in the first place. Let people have their absurd delusions and move on and focus on the bigger picture. I mean, I wish I could just say that intersectionality is this funny and ridiculous movement for virtue signaling social justice proponents with an attention deficit and too much time on their hands, but the problem is, it is a potentially harmful threat because it is a distraction from totalitarianism and used to justify censorship. Coming back to Black Lives Matter, it is, no pun intended, not a black and white issue. Individual acts of hatred against black or white people will always exist, but it is not an institutionalized or a one-sided problem. Every black person has the opportunity to prove their individual skills and kindness, just like every white person does. But, and this might be controversial, especially for my own audience, I believe that All Lives Matter is a spiteful attempt to silence Black people who are actually concerned because they have been misled to believe that they are being oppressed. So, what is much more productive is to debunk those arguments coming from the side of Black Lives Matter extremism and show Black people that their own movements, their Black Lives Matter movements, are being infiltrated by terroristic organizations like Antifa, who pay Black people to throw rocks at the police to convey a bad image of Black people. On the other hand, if you say Black Lives Matter and you don't look beyond the messages that you're being indoctrinated with, you do not actually believe that Black Lives Matter until you talk about Black on Black crime, until you talk about Black domestic abuse and Black single motherhood. If you believe that Black Lives Matter is your special little club that will bring about justice, you are wrong. A 2015 Justice Department analysis of the Philadelphia Police Department found that white police officers were less likely than Black or Hispanic officers to shoot unarmed Black suspects. Research by Harvard economist Roland G. Fryer Jr. also found no evidence of racial discrimination in shootings. Any evidence to the contrary fails to take into account crime rates and civilian behavior before and during interactions with police. In 2018, the latest year for which such data have been published, African Americans made up 53% of known homicide offenders in the US and commit about 60% of robberies, though they are 13% of the population. What is also interesting to note is that imprisonment rates have declined across racial and ethnic groups, especially among Black Americans. Between 1980 and 2008, Blacks were disproportionately represented as both homicide victims and offenders. The homicide victimization rate for Blacks was 6 times higher than the rate for whites. Blacks accounted for slightly more than 51% of all gun homicide victims between 1980 and 2008, despite representing only about 13% of the US population. The homicide offending rate for Blacks was almost 8 times higher than the rate for whites. The vast majority of homicides are intraracial, with 84% of white victims killed by whites and 93% of Black victims killed by Blacks. Black males between the ages of 18 and 24 are dramatically overrepresented in homicide. Homicides of young Black males in this age category peaked at 195.9 victimizations per 100,000 in 1993 and subsequently declined to 91.1 victimizations per 100,000 in 2008. Homicides by young adult Black males peaked at 365 offenders per 100,000 in 1993 and subsequently declined to 175.8 offenders per 100,000 in 2008. Race baiting, climate panic, corona terror, gender absurdity, feminist extremism, religious debates, and hate speech outrage are all distractions. Like a crazy roller coaster with ups and downs and wild triple loops that ends in a deadly swamp. You might think that those movements give you some kind of purpose. They don't. They make you a panic puppet. And therefore, as always, I want you to remember that I don't want you to panic, I want you to think. Lastly, I want to mention that I am thinking about making live streams in the future, so if you would be interested in that, please leave a comment down below and let me know what time and date usually works best for you, as well as don't forget to add your time zone and then I will try to figure something out that works for most of you. I will probably announce the next live stream on my Twitter account as well as Facebook and Instagram and maybe even a post on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to all of those channels and maybe even hit the notification bell. Everything you do to engage with this video, leaving a like and a comment and subscribing to the channel really helps to get this video in the algorithm because this channel is heavily shadow banned. If you want to contribute to the court case that I am currently involved in against the German state media authorities who want to force me to take down some of my most influential videos about climate skepticism because I am allegedly a threat to the climate-friendly movement, as they put it, then please have a look at the description down below. I post some articles and a video about the topic as well as ways to donate. Thank you so much once again and see you in the next one.